What a joy it is to be with you this morning, to be part of your association Sunday celebration, and to reflect with you on excellence in ministry. I want to begin this morning by saying a few thank yous. First of all, thank you. Thank you to the Tigers for last night. When they were behind 18 points in the third quarter, you see, I've served in the Southeast for 10 years. And I know how it can be on Sunday morning after your team loses, grumpy, and that's a big game. So I was really grateful that they pulled it out last night. I want to say thank you to Alex, your interminister, for inviting me to be with you this morning. Thank you to the wonderful musicians who created that great music. To Cindy, who's been such a great support to me the last few weeks, and she told me this morning it's the first time she did this. I'm shocked. And thank you to all of you for your connection and your commitment to Unitarian Universalism, for being a fair share congregation, and for participating this year in Association Sunday. Thank you for the many spiritual and social justice outreach programs you do for this community. And of course, thank you for being here this morning, because I know how it is when a guest preacher is in town. It seems a little easier to stay in bed and maybe take Sunday mornings off, so I appreciate those of you who came this morning. I bring tidings and greetings of hope and anticipation to you from the over 1,700 active, retired Unitarian Universalist ministers and seminarians from around the world, who I work for as the executive director of the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association. The UUMA's purpose is to support and nurture excellence in ministry through mainly continuing education and collegiality. I have the great good fortune to serve, advocate, and occasionally lead those people who, in Jack Mendelssohn's words, are never completely satisfied or satisfiable, never completely adjusted or adjustable, who walk in two worlds, one of things as they are, and the other of things as they ought to be, and loves them both. While I'm not sure that all of us UU ministers really love both of those worlds, I do know that Mendelssohn is correct about one thing 100%. He writes, the future of the liberal church is almost totally dependent on two factors: great congregations, whether large or small, and skilled, effective, dedicated ministers. The strangest feature of their relationship is that they create one another. As you continue the process of discernment and reflection that will lead you to calling your second settled minister, I want to explore with you this morning what happens when great congregations and great ministers create one another. Or, to put it another way, what needs to be in place to nurture excellence in ministry? Excellence in ministry. What might that be? The UUMA continues to develop and strengthen programs, training, expectations, and standards of conduct to nurture excellent ministers. But I hope you noticed that our purpose is not to nurture excellent ministers, but excellent ministry. Because we know what Jack Mendelssohn, and I suspect most of you know, ministry is not something that is done only by ministers. Excellent ministry takes ministers, of course, but it also takes religious educators, musicians, administrators, and every member of a congregation to make it a reality. Ours is a shared ministry. The word ministry in its most ancient form simply meant to serve. The Universalist minister Gordon McKeeman claims that ministry is a quality of relationship between and among human beings that beckons forth hidden possibilities, and that ministry is inviting people into deeper, more constant, more reverent relationship with the world and one another. If we hold Gordon's words and the original definition of ministry to be true, ministry is to serve and bring forth the best in each other. Defining ministry is pretty easy, but excellence, not so much. We know it when we see it. Or in the case of ministry, we know it when we experience it. When we connect with something greater than ourselves. When we are transformed by serving others. When we find meaning and purpose. And when we create a world with more compassion and more love. Knowing that excellence is always a moving target, a target that we never really know we have reached. And knowing that excellence in ministry is usually found in places we cannot measure, our hearts, our minds, our souls. I offer you this morning a few lessons I have learned on how to co-create excellence in ministry with the congregations and the ministers I have served. Perhaps the most important lesson is that the mission and health of the congregation is the most important work and ministry that ministers, staffs, and congregation members must be about. The first thing I do whenever I come to a congregation to preach or consult with them is to look at their mission and to see how seriously they take it. We read an affirmation this morning that looks like something like a mission or at least a covenant. When I looked at your website, and I know it's under construction, I couldn't really find your mission. And that may be because it's just a hard website for me, or perhaps that's something you want to work on. Unfortunately, many congregations, ministers, and religious professionals too often forget their mission and focus instead on individuals and not enough on fulfilling the larger mission. This is one of the reasons that we have not grown as a religious movement, and often is one of the greatest causes of conflict in our congregations. Ministers and staff need the freedom and the courage to challenge congregations into more fully living their missions. And congregations must expect their ministers, staff, and members to pay attention to the mission of the congregation more than their own individual personal satisfaction. My colleague Julie Ann Silberman-Bunn says this well. She says, a church is not a place where you are catered to and pampered. Our congregations are religious communities, sanctuaries for those in need, safe havens and respites from the chaos of the world. Churches neither expect nor guarantee satisfaction. Excellence in ministry and mission are not about satisfaction, but they are about transformation in ourselves, in our congregations, and in our larger communities. The second lesson I have learned is that congregational polity does not equal congregational isolation. Too many of our congregations are isolated from connecting with our larger association. That's why I'm so glad to be here today in this congregation that doesn't seem to have that problem as much as some do. We are fortunate as Unitarian Universalists that we have inherited the free church tradition, which places the locus of power and decision-making in the hands of the congregation, and not a denominational hierarchy. Congregations ordain ministers. They set their own budget, raise their own money to meet those budgets. Congregations are their own independent organizations, and they are not required to be in relationship with anyone outside their doors. Or are they? Reaching out to another is at the core of the religious life. Being in community with other congregations, other faith traditions, not only adds perspectives and learning to a congregation, it gives congregations the joy of serving and teaching someone else. Association Sunday is a day, in UUA President Peter Morales' words, when we talk about how important it is to work together to bring change in our world. I stand before you today not only as the Executive Director of the UUMA, but I'm also a member of our Liberal Religious Educators Association and our Unitarian Universalist Ministers Network as well. Our professional organizations are working together in new ways to strengthen our connections and provide new practices for learning and growth. We only can do that with your and other congregations' help. Like Higgins, my friend, the drop of water. One drop, one person, one congregation, one professional association can do so much more when joined by others. Reaching out and being in relationship with others leads us to the next lesson. Covenant is not optional. To build the beloved community and practice excellent ministry, we must make promises to each other about what we value and how we wish to be with each other. We are a covenantal and not a creedal faith. If we are to grow in our spiritual and emotional maturity, we must agree on how we will be together. Everything does not go. Being part of something larger than ourselves means that sometimes we must make sacrifices for the greater good. Covenants are not rules of behavior. They are promises about how we wish to be in relationship with one another and how we wish to be challenged and comforted into being better selves and a better community. Covenants, when done right, create and nurture trust. And trust, or rather the lack of trust, is one of the shadow sides of Unitarian Universalism that can quietly destroy the morale and connections of a congregation. We sometimes do not trust our leaders, and our leaders are cautious to trust us. Instead of assuming best intentions, too often we fear and criticize those who are paid and who volunteer to lead us. When we speak about the benefits of building and taking part in a religious community, it's easy to get carried away with the ideals of what a community can be and forget the realities of how difficult building and taking part in community truly is. Nobody said that congregational life or excellence in ministry would be easy. It's only worth it. The next lesson, and one of the goals of this association, is to cultivate and develop leaders. To practice excellence in ministry, to create the beloved community, a congregation that transforms lives, that makes a difference in the lives of the larger community. To do that, it demands strong, compassionate, competent leadership. Leadership development, training, and support is not an optional practice. It must be a fundamental priority of every congregation. To serve in leadership, to assist and support your leaders, paid and unpaid, to spend money to make sure everybody gets the best training they can, is what every member and every minister must be committed to. It's not okay for nominating committees to have to ask 10 or 20 people to find who will serve. It's not okay for congregations to elect members to serve on boards or committees and not give them the skills and tools to be effective. It's not okay for religious professionals to not be held accountable to leadership and spiritual development plans and or not being given the budget to do them right. The next lesson may be especially important to you as you remember and as you do the work of preparing for your next settled minister. Ministers are not your friends, so treat them better than that. The congregant-minister relationship is a unique one, formed often in large part by past experiences and projections that have nothing much to do with who the minister is. Whoever you next call to be your minister, they will have some of the stuff that delivers excellence in ministry, and so do you. The challenge will be, what will you do with and for each other to bring out the best in each other? Shower your minister with appreciation, and most importantly, the gift of telling him or her your truth, hopefully with love. Don't expect him to be your friend. Do expect her to tell you the truth as they see it. And not only the truth that will make you feel comforted all the time. Take a risk. Give cards and presents even when it is not a holiday or their birthday. Be more generous and give more money so that your minister and all your paid religious professionals know you are as serious about this place as they are. Expect him or her to want to be here for a long time because you believe in yourselves and because you are committed to creating a congregation that enables and supports excellent ministry in all its glorious forms. The last lesson I will share with you today, and of course there's many more, but you have other things to do on this beautiful day. The last lesson is that spiritual practice is foundational to Unitarian Universalism and congregational life. Spiritual practice is the regular act of doing something, hopefully every day, that connects us with the Spirit, the sacredness, the joy, the depth that lives within and outside of us. Ministry, and especially excellent ministry, demands that we have deep wells to draw from. Spiritual practice, drinking from the springs that quench our thirst, is essential. People who are able to cultivate regular spiritual practice, whether that be singing, praying, meditating, writing, painting, exercising, worshiping on Sunday morning, or hundreds more, seem to experience more peace and more joy. Two fundamental spiritual practices are gratitude and generosity. There are many, many ways to acknowledge and celebrate these two, both in our lives and in our congregations. Days like today, when we have a special chance to donate to something like Association Sunday, and these weeks when you are celebrating your annual stewardship campaign, gives us a chance to celebrate both gratitude and generosity. I personally have written the largest check I have ever given to the UUA for this year's Association Sunday. I do that out of a sense of gratitude and hopefully generosity, but also from a place of both memory and hope. Not only in honor of the memory of ministers, musicians, and educators who have taught and inspired me, but also because on October 15, 1995, 16 years ago yesterday, I celebrated Ministry Sunday in my first Unitarian Universalist congregation in Monterey, California. I had been a UU for less than 1 year. But as I sat in my seat listening to a sermon about the power of ministry, a sermon that honestly I don't remember one word of, and then giving money to help support ministry, I realized as I sat in that seat, as you are sitting here now, that I no longer could say no to the call to become a minister. I was in seminary less than a year later. I became a minister in part out of hope. Hope that my life could make a bigger difference in the world. Hope that I could learn and teach how to connect more deeply to the source and mystery of life, so that I could bring more joy, more peace, more love to my life and the lives of those I served. I give to Association Sunday in the hope that all of our religious professionals can have more opportunities to learn and then teach, that religious professionals and congregations can connect more deeply with each other and with the source and mystery of life. And perhaps, just maybe, joy, peace, and love will multiply as well. On behalf of the thousands of ministers, religious educators, and musicians who will benefit from your donations today, those who all are in the UUMA, Loretta, and UU Musicians Network, and on behalf of the more than 1,000 congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, I say thank you for your commitment and your generosity to Unitarian Universalism. May you know the joy, peace, and love and transformation that ministry, excellent ministry, brings. May it be so. Amen.